Midday in the Sahara. The sand surface rises to over 120 degrees. There is no standing water for hundreds of miles. Humidity is so low it cracks human skin in hours. When night falls, temperatures plunge into the 40s, a 70-degree swing that kills most life before thirst ever gets the chance. Almost nothing thrives here, but something does. A 4-pound predator, the smallest canid on Earth, did not just survive this desert, it conquered it. What made that possible is a blueprint so precise, the Sahara looks as if it were built for the fox, not the other way around. At noon, the Sahara sand transforms into a living kiln. Satellite thermal maps show vast stretches of dune field blazing at over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and some patches on fine-grained transverse dunes push past 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Salt pans stripped of shade and moisture radiate even more heat, reaching 140 degrees Fahrenheit under a cloudless sky. Ground probes sunk 5 centimeters beneath the surface log temperature spikes every 10 minutes, recording midday highs that would melt plastic. But it is not just the heat. Relative humidity across the Fennec range barely scrapes 15%. In July, it can drop below 5%. The atmosphere itself becomes a thief, pulling water from skin and fur at a rate that leaves most mammals desiccated before they can even seek shade. Permanent water sources are rare, often more than 100 miles from the core Fennec territories. Vapor pressure deficit readings rise above 4 kilopascals, a number that signals the air's hunger for every drop of moisture. These are not random spikes, but the daily reality mapped by satellite and confirmed by ground thermocouple. This is an environment that strips away the unprepared, a crucible where only the most precise survivors can last. A single track crosses the sand, smaller than a child's finger, pressed beside the deep imprint of a desert boot. The animal that left it weighs less than 4 pounds, barely enough to tip a kitchen scale. Yet this is no lost rodent or scurrying lizard. This is the apex predator of the world's harshest desert. The Fennec fox, Vulpes zerda, stands at the edge of a salt pan, its silhouette dwarfed by an ocean of dunes that can swallow cities. In the open, it looks impossibly delicate. Ears like sails, a body no bigger than a house cat, fur so pale it almost vanishes against the sand. The numbers seem absurd. A full-grown adult, just 4 pounds, facing a landscape that can kill a camel. But the fox does not cower. It moves with purpose, nose twitching, ears scanning, as if the desert itself is a puzzle it was born to solve. Somewhere out here, the difference between life and death is measured in grams, in the width of a shadow, in the silent calculation of risk. The Fennec is not a victim of the Sahara. It is its specialist, a master of the improbable. When a field researcher whispers, breath held, watching that tiny shape slip between dunes, the awe is real. How can something so small dare to rule a world this vast and hostile? At the center of the Sahara's furnace, the Fennec fox stands as a master of passive cooling. Its ears, stretching up to 6 inches, nearly a third of its body length, are not just for listening. Each pinna is laced with a dense network of blood vessels. When the sand burns at 45 degrees Celsius, thermal cameras capture the ears blazing with heat, glowing brighter than any other part of the fox. Blood surges through this vascular web, dumping excess warmth into the dry desert air before it can threaten the fox's core. Physiologists have measured the skin of the pinna at 45 degrees Celsius, even as the fox's core stays steady at 38 degrees Celsius. The effect is dramatic. At full dilation, each ear can shed up to 10 watts, enough to cool a laptop, all in a creature that weighs just 4 pounds. But the marvel does not stop at the head. The Fennec's feet, often hidden beneath the sand, are armored in a layer of pale, silky fur. Under the microscope, these foot hairs reveal a secret. A reflectance rate of 78% bounces away nearly 4/5 of the sun's energy before it can scorch the skin. On surfaces that would cook an egg, the fox can run, dig, and hunt without burning its pads. Heat flux experiments show that Fennec foot pads dissipate thermal energy 35% more efficiently than those of its Arctic cousin, flipping the logic of cold weather insulation into a shield against desert fire. In a rare field demonstration, a physiologist kneels beside a captive Fennec, aiming a handheld thermal imager. The resulting footage is striking. The ears flare red, the feet shimmer with reflected light, while the body remains cool and composed. Numbers spill from the screen: 6-inch ears, skin at 45 degrees Celsius, 78% reflectance, each one proof that the Fennec is not simply surviving, but engineering the impossible. These adaptations are not quirks. They are the product of relentless selection, turning form into function and setting the stage for the fox's next act, turning those same ears into tools of acoustic precision. Inside the Fennec fox, survival is chemistry at its most exacting. Where the Sahara's heat and dryness strip water from almost everything, the fox's kidneys operate like living distilleries. Each kidney is packed with an elongated medulla, twice as thick as in other small canids, stacked with juxtamedullary nephrons built for one task: extracting every possible drop of water from waste. In laboratory trials, Fennecs on a dry diet produce urine with an osmolality of up to 3,500 millismoles per kilogram. That is denser than seawater, and it rivals the most water-efficient mammals on Earth. Over weeks without drinking, a Fennec can lose less than a milliliter of urine per day, conserving water so efficiently that its body mass barely shifts. In the wild, this means a fox can thrive for months on nothing but the moisture bound up in beetles or the blood of a desert mouse. But the kidneys are only half the story. Each breath is filtered through a labyrinth of nasal turbinates, fine scroll-like bones lined with mucous membranes. As the fox exhales, these surfaces reclaim water vapor from the outgoing air, condensing it back into the body instead of letting it vanish into the parched wind. Respirometry studies show that at 40 degrees Celsius and 20% humidity, a Fennec loses less than 5 milligrams of water per hour per kilogram of body weight through breathing. That is about half the respiratory loss measured in desert jackals, and a fraction of what a house cat would lose under the same conditions. This twin system, hyper-concentrating kidneys and moisture-trapping nasal passages, means the Fennec fox can run, hunt, and even raise pups in a world where standing water is a rumor and the air itself is thirsty. Every cell, every organ is tuned to resist dehydration. Where most mammals would perish in days, the Fennec's internal safeguards transform scarcity into just another variable to be managed. In the Sahara, where every gram of water is a victory, the smallest canid on Earth has made precision its shield. Night falls over the Sahara, and the world of the Fennec fox comes alive. In the silence, a faint rustle beneath the sand is enough to draw its attention. The fox pauses, ears pivoting like radar dishes, each pinna stretching nearly 6 inches and tuned for a single purpose: to capture the subtlest signals in a desert that hides its life underground. A bioacoustician spectrogram traces the scene. Most frequencies lie flat, but a sudden spike at 15 kilohertz flares on the screen. That is the signature of an insect's leg scraping through loose grains, or the high-pitched squeak of a gerbil tunneling in darkness. Field experiments have shown that a Fennec can detect these sounds from up to 30 feet away, even when the source is buried beneath several inches of sand. The desert is not silent. It is a layered code of vibrations and frequencies, and the fox's brain runs a kind of sensory computation in real time, parsing the static for patterns that mean food. The margin for error is razor thin, and every failed calculation wastes precious energy in a world where a missed meal could mean dehydration or death. The fox's head tilts, ears cupped forward, muscles tense. In the darkness, it listens for the faintest rise in amplitude, a beetle's frantic scramble or a mouse shifting in its burrow. The 15 kilohertz spike is not just a number, it is the threshold where the Fennec's world comes into focus. The signal is there for only a second, but that is enough. The fox's entire body becomes an antenna, mapping the desert's acoustic landscape with a precision no other canid can match. On the spectrogram, the spike fades, replaced by a sudden burst of static as the fox explodes into action. The next move is already decided. But in this hush before the sand erupts, the Fenneca's genius is revealed, not in what it sees, but in what it hears. The silence breaks. In a single motion, the Fennec launches itself at the sand, forepaws flashing in a blur. Grains spray skyward. Each dig is precise, measured, practiced, never wasting energy. Within seconds, the surface collapses and the fox's snout plunges deep, ears pressed flat, body coiled like a spring. The prey is invisible to any eye, but not to this hunter. In the darkness beneath, a Saharan silver ant scrambles, or perhaps a fat-tailed gerbil freezes in terror. The menu is wide. Beetles, grasshoppers, spiders, scorpions, lizards, even the occasional bird's egg. On a good night, a single fox might catch dozens of insects, a handful of rodents, and, if luck holds, a sleeping bird tucked in a hollow. Every catch is a calculation, a balance of risk, energy, and water. The fox's body, tuned to the edge of starvation, wastes nothing. The dig ends with a sharp snap. Sand flies. A beetle, its carapace still glistening, is pinned between needle teeth. The fox tilts its head, crunches once, and swallows. In this world, every gram counts. The hunt continues, paws barely making a sound on the cooling surface, nose low, ears still scanning for the next signal. Each step is guided by a kind of algorithm, sensory computation in real time, where sound, scent, and vibration converge into action. Across the globe, the Arctic fox faces a different puzzle. Prey hidden beneath snow, not sand. Yet the same solution emerges. In the north, a flash of white fur dives through ice, ears tuned for the muffled squeak of a lemming. In the Sahara, the Fennec's dig is the desert's answer to the polar plunge. Evolution, working with different raw materials, arrives at parallel designs, a convergence written in fur, bone, and instinct. The smallest canid on Earth is not a relic or a fluke. It is the product of relentless selection, a specialist whose every sense and muscle has been shaped by the world's most unforgiving test. As one bioacoustician puts it, the Fennec's ears are not just for hearing, they are for decoding the desert's hidden life, one frequency at a time. Beneath the burning dunes, the Fennec fox engineers its own oasis. The entrance is barely wider than a grapefruit, but below the surface lies a labyrinth that defies the Sahara's violence. Manual excavations and ground-penetrating radar reveal burrow systems plunging as deep as 10 meters, or over 30 feet, into the sand. These underground fortresses sprawl across an area the size of a city apartment, with up to 15 separate entrances twisting through the dunes. Each tunnel is a deliberate act of survival, carved by paws armored in silky fur, designed to keep the desert at bay. Inside, the air is transformed. Where the surface bakes at 54 degrees Celsius, the core of a Fennec burrow stays steady at 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. That is a drop of 10 to 15 degrees, enough to turn a lethal oven into a sanctuary. Humidity rises to nearly 30%, triple what the outside air can offer. In this microclimate, the fox's heart rate slows, its body relaxes, and the risk of dehydration falls away. For the Fennec, the burrow is more than shelter. It is a buffer against the world's most extreme temperature swings, a place where pups can sleep through the day and emerge at dusk without risking their lives. But this is not a solitary refuge. Up to 10 foxes share the same network: parents, siblings, yearlings. This is a tight community. Each member has a role. Some dig, others guard, and a few scout the shifting entrances for threats. The architecture adapts as the dunes shift. If a tunnel collapses, the group repairs it overnight. If a predator circles, multiple exits offer escape. Scent marks at each entrance serve as signposts, mapping the ever-changing landscape for every family member. This is a living structure, maintained by memory, teamwork, and relentless vigilance. The burrow stands as the Fennec's answer to the Sahara's cruelty, a feat of engineering that turns sand into safety, heat into comfort, and isolation into community. In the world's worst desert, survival is not just a matter of anatomy or instinct. It is a matter of collective intelligence, of knowing that even the smallest canid can outwit the desert as long as it never digs alone. A newborn Fennec pup, eyes sealed, ears folded tight, is cradled in the darkness of a burrow. In the first weeks, warmth and survival depend on the closeness of a family. Both parents share the work. One guards the entrance, the other grooms each pup with gentle precision. Litters are small, usually 2 to 5. After a gestation of about 51 days, each new life arrives into a world where the odds are stacked high from the start. For the first month, pups rarely leave the den. Their fur is thin, their bodies fragile, and even a short exposure to the desert sun could prove fatal. It takes 8 weeks of near-constant nursing before the young are ready to step above ground. By 3 months, they begin to shadow their parents at dusk, learning the art of the hunt and the geography of the burrow's many exits. But the rituals of family life are under siege. Human hands reach deep into the desert, driven by the demand for exotic pets. In Morocco and Algeria, wire traps and makeshift cages line the outskirts of Fennec territory. Rescue centers in North Africa open crates to find pups barely clinging to life, limbs broken, ribs showing through fur, eyes clouded with infection. A wildlife rehabilitator in Tunisia recalls a pup so dehydrated, her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. After days of fluids and quiet care, the fox finally stood, trembling but alive. These recoveries are rare. Roughly half of all confiscated Fennecs die before they can ever be released. The trauma of capture, the shock of captivity, and untreated wounds leave scars both visible and hidden. The pressure does not end with poachers. The Sahara itself is changing. Satellite records show the average surface temperature has climbed by 1.5 degrees Celsius since 2000. Drought events have surged by 30% in the past 2 decades. As heat rises and water vanishes, the insects and rodents that sustain Fennec families become harder to find. Even the deepest burrow cannot shield pups from an empty pantry. Conservation groups scramble to respond, but the numbers are grim. One NGO worker describes a cycle of rescue and loss. For every fox returned to the wild, another 2 are lost to traps, heat, or hunger. The stakes are written in every family group: 10 foxes huddled in a burrow, a single pup pressed against its mother, the silence that follows when a den is abandoned. The smallest canid on Earth, built for the harshest desert, now faces perils that no adaptation can outpace. The next generation is not just at risk from the world outside the burrow, but from the world the burrow can no longer keep at bay. Right now, Sahara's ultimate survivor faces a threat it never evolved to fight: us. As climate change scrambles the desert's extremes and the exotic pet trade empties burrows, precision evolution is no longer enough. A species built for hell is running out of hell to call home. The question is whether we notice before silence replaces those oversized ears. Share your thoughts below.